Hello, welcome back to Divorce Happens, the
Thank
podcast
you.
where we support you. We're so excited to have Victoria here today. The podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter because divorce happens and then we start fresh. And we're here with somebody that we adore over here at Fresh Starts. And I already told her before we started recording she's going to come back for like 10 episodes. Um, a very, very important topic, something very close to my heart, which is really how to leave after a toxic relationship. What is a toxic relationship? So I'm going to let her take the stage and explain who she is first of all. So, Victoria, who are you?
Well, I am Victoria Latifses. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist. I've been licensed for, gosh, it's been 20 years, and it feels strange to say that, but I'm licensed in the state of Texas, and I am days away, just waiting for my license number for New York. So I
Yay!
will be opening a branch office in New York. So that's very exciting.
Very exciting. I can't wait to start referring to you to people up here in Yankee County. So
Yay.
Victoria, so a question. I have divorce consults with women every day now, and we have thousands of people that come to Fresh Starts. And I would say the number one question we get is, how do I leave? And am I in a toxic relationship? And how do I heal after a toxic relationship? So I know this could be like a full book, totally. But let's chat today about an overview. You are so just wise when it comes to all of these things and explaining it in a really, really clear and concise way. So where do we begin with this?
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm so excited to be back. This is just a wonderful opportunity, and this subject is so close to my heart. I've been working with protective parents and kids, and I did some family court advocacy back in Los Angeles when I was licensed in California. And as you know, and as I have learned, um, divorce at its best is difficult and a hard adjustment on everyone. And not everyone has the experience of a collaborative and mediated
No,
experience
no,
with the legal field. They
yeah,
just don't get that. So that's the best case scenario. A lot of relationships, unfortunately, may be toxic and maybe abusive. That's what we're really talking about. We're talking about abusive relationships, and that can be one or both parties. But it's very difficult to leave. You know, when we look at the research literature, we're looking at, unfortunately, women being more economically disempowered,
mm,
maybe staying home with the kids. And so oftentimes it is that person who is on the receiving end. But I have both men and women who come into my practice seeking help for these kinds of things. So, how to leave a toxic relationship? I've got 6 steps outlined, of course. That makes it sound really easy, and it is not. It is heart wrenching. It is a fear inducing endeavor at best.
yeah,
So that's why I think these tips are so important. So the first one, for sure, is build your social support network. Do that now. Build community. Find others maybe who are going through this, and start talking. That's another tip. Talk to your family. Tell them what's going on.
mm,
Pick someone you can trust. This is essential because chances are they may not know. They
no,
may not know what's happening to you.
yeah.
And it's just really important because we need to engender the support. We need to call in our supporters. We need backup in
Yeah.
these situations.
I have a question
Because
for you, Victoria. Yeah, I have a question. And again, we're going to have you come back on to really flesh this out in more detail. But as somebody that's been through emotional abuse and psychological abuse and talked to a lot of women in all different abusive situations, isolation is a big part of abuse, right? So I just wanted to put that out there that, it may be difficult to start building that social support. However, doing things like reaching out to us here at Fresh Starts, we have so many of our experts, yourself included, have free consultation calls, right? And I can connect
Mhm.
you to somebody who can connect you to somebody to start getting those resources, right? Because it can be really scary to know where to begin and who to tell. I do think talking to your family is a really important tip. That's something that it was hard to do, but that's what got me started off as well.
It's terrifying, quite honestly. Um, and one of the great things I think you have on your website, there are so many, but are the simple scripts.
Yeah.
How to, I mean, I was looking at one with a client of mine a few days ago,
Mm,
and it was literally, how do I call a utility company?
mhm.
Things like that, things we may have never had to do
Yeah.
because it's always been that way for 20 years or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, when we are going through so much emotional stress, and this is one of the most stressful experiences anyone can ever go through, um, we need things like that at our fingertips. We need to be able to pull an article from over here or this script from
Yeah.
over here and say, oh, this person's done it before. And
Yep.
finding that community of women and men who have been there, who have
Yeah.
survived this.
Yep.
So that's really critical. And that kind of leads into the next part, which is finding small ways to become independent. It
Mm,
doesn't happen overnight, but we begin with small things, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we get to healing. And another thing in the 6 tips is reach out to professionals. Unfortunately, it may be law enforcement, it may be an attorney, but it also may be a therapist, and these are also people who can protect you, help you, and figure out what it is you need to do to move forward. And
yeah.
and what are the things that you want? You know,
Yep.
what do you want? And how do
Yeah.
you want to be safe?
Yeah.
So those are important things. And then the sixth one is simply just take care of yourself. A lot of us don't have a self-care practice until the rubber meets the road and something happens. And
Yeah.
then we're like, oh my gosh, I have no way to really take care of myself. So and one thing that you had mentioned, which is the isolation. And so I just wanted to really briefly go over what is a toxic relationship, because not everyone knows. But basically, I would say if a person is feeling afraid, if they are experiencing abuse, emotional, verbal, physical, sexual, economic, okay, those are forms of abuse. Examples would be name calling, and you named it isolation, any kind of violence, humiliation, threats, or manipulation, all those count. The one we were talking about just a bit earlier before we started was blocking someone's egress from a room. If there's a high conflict moment and someone wants to leave the room and someone blocks your exit from a doorway, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But that is considered domestic violence.
Or it blocks your
And I
car, right? My car was
Or blocks
blocked.
you from leaving your
Mhm.
car or takes your
Mhm.
keys, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So those are very important things to note. Um, and while we're mentioning that, I just thought, I know it's on your website, but I will throw out again the domestic violence hotline number, 1-800-799-7233.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so I think there are so many reasons why we are afraid to leave, you know? Um,
I have a question, Victoria. I have a quick question because you're just the expert in this. So I have a lot of people that have talked to me that say, well, he just calls me a name or he just yells at me in front of the kids or he just does sometimes, right? So I still think we're very caught up with abuse being only physical in our culture, and emotional and spiritual and psychological and financial abuse can destroy somebody just as much, right, as physical abuse. And we don't acknowledge it because it's not like we don't get bruises, right? We're not pushed down the stairs. It's not the same thing. And so I would love just your thoughts on like this idea that like abuse can be quiet, right? It can be like covert, as we like to say, right?
oh,
What what
yes.
what have what are your thoughts on that for anybody listening that's like, am I being abused? Am I not being abused?
If you feel afraid, unsure of yourself, one big hallmark is being unable to make decisions. That to me speaks volumes. You know, if I have someone who's afraid to make decisions on their own, um, it really just, it makes the person, it's a slow erosion of our selfhood, our personhood, our esteem, our ability to think for ourselves, because
Yeah.
those, comments, or they can be slight comments, or it can even be silent abuse. Ignoring is a huge tactic, right? The silent treatment, or sleep deprivation. That's another silent one.
Oh
But
yeah.
these things are very purposeful, and they have a specific intent, which is to wear us down and render us incapable of mounting a reasonable response in
Mm,
return. And so that is so hard for people because we
yeah.
have children. We may still love the person. Finances are obviously going to be at play.
Right.
Um, so it's really difficult, I think.
You know,
But
yeah,
that's
yeah, and I think that that was so well said. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, for me, the emotional abuse was so nuanced, right? And it was so customized. And so on the other side, if someone's telling you, if you have a friend that comes and says, "Well, he says these things to me," the response shouldn't be, "Well, it doesn't sound like it's abuse," right? Because it may be abuse to them, right? It may be that, like, maybe in your marriage, him looking at pornography is fine, but in your marriage it's not, right? And so whatever it is, I want, if you're listening to this and you have somebody in your life going through it, don't discount what they're saying because it doesn't apply to your life and situation. Abuse is so tailored, and that's why it starts at day one, almost, right? But you don't notice
it
it.
sure does. Well, it starts, yes, it starts by knocking us off our center, usually with the love bombing.
Yeah.
But if we are, with someone who's manipulative and maybe meets that criteria of being a coercive controller, it's a specific subset of a type of abuser, then we are really, really more at risk for worse mental health outcomes
Yeah.
and, more difficulty in healing. So the things I think I would tell folks to watch out for after separation, when you're trying to sort of get your feet firmly on the ground and figure out, okay, what's the next thing to do? But I'm still filled with fear. And what is it about that? Because maybe they were filled with fear prior to leaving. But things like inability to sleep or wanting to sleep too much, panic attacks, anxiety, maybe starting to use alcohol or drugs to cope when that wasn't a solution before. Or same thing with food,
Yeah.
overeating, undereating, those types of things. Um, Slight suicidal ideation, thinking, gosh, it just would be better if I wasn't here anymore. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Feelings of self hate, low self esteem, and being afraid of other people and forming new relationships. Those
Mm.
are times when I would say, there are wonderful healing folks out there. A lot of them you can find at the YW or YMCA or your
Mm.
local domestic violence shelter.
Yep.
These folks I've found have some of the highest levels of training and some of the most cutting edge modalities of treatment.
I
So,
love that. I love that. That's a great
yeah,
tip, especially for people who don't have finances, like many women do not.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know our local shelter, Austin, or Safe Austin, I think it's called now. They just changed the name, Safe Alliance, offers, I think it's 6 free sessions. But these folks have been trained at the Somatic Experiencing Institute at the University of Texas, Austin.
Yeah.
They're top notch. This is the best treatment. The
Yeah.
same with the Y.
Yep.
Those are sliding scale appointments here in Austin. I know other big cities have something
Mhm.
similar set up.
Yeah.
And these are just wonderful places to find support and not feel so alone.
Yeah, I know a lot of libraries, like our local library has a social worker that comes in for free often,
Right.
and you can just, you can ask questions and things like that. And I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but once you start the process getting support, it kind of snowballs, right? Because you start
Mhm.
gaining that confidence.
It's absolutely true. And, you know, it can be a long road and it can feel like, oh my gosh, how will I ever climb up this mountain and see the top and then be able to look down into the valley below.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I can say is that it's wonderful to see clients do this. And it absolutely can be done. It takes some persistence and sometimes for some of us, you know, who have had maybe a difficult childhood or are carrying some pre-existing trauma and we're thinking, oh well, when the kids get older I'll deal with that. This might be the wonderful time
Mm,
to figure out, okay, if there was something there, what's keeping me from experiencing greater freedom and joy, authenticity, and all of that in my own life? It's
mm,
time. Yeah,
I
it's
love
time.
that. I love that. So, Victoria, if somebody's listening to this and they're going through a divorce or considering divorce, what would be some words of encouragement that you could leave them with today?
Oh gosh, do not give up. Do not give up. It gets better. And the more time away from the abuser, this is how you heal. The more time you're no contact or low contact, the more you can start to heal. And I know that's difficult with co parenting and it looks different for everyone, but the more you can separate yourself from the control of that person, the sooner you're going to heal. And I have seen so many folks come out the other side saying, I can't believe I made it this far. And so that could be you too.
I love that. Yep, me. That's me, and I know that's you too.
Yes,
Well,
that's
thank
me
you
too.
so much, Victoria. We're gonna have
You're
her back
welcome.
on to talk more about so many of these topics. And if you would like to get in touch, have openings for clients right now in Texas and soon to
Yeah,
be in New
I
York as
do.
well.
Yes, I can be
Amazing,
found on
amazing.
Psychology Today and on Instagram at Dr. Victoria Latifses. And my website will be up at the end of the week, drvictorialatifses.com.
Amazing. And as always, you can find her at Fresh Starts and the Expert Guide because we're so happy she's one of our Fresh Starts experts. Thank you for these wise words and for the encouragement and support that you give today and always to everybody that you encounter. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here.